What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Art of Show. This week, we're chatting with illustrator Scott Campbell about his new book, XO Ox, as well as his dreams of being on Saturday Night Live.
Welcome to The Art of Show, where we feature the people who are creating amazing stories for kids. Join us as we chat with children's book illustrators and authors, storyboardists, animators, and more. Now, their art might be for kids, but aren't we all just kids at heart? Here's your host, Brandon.
Hey guys, so we're going to dive into this interview with Scott Campbell. Scott is an amazing illustrator. He's got several books out, and he recently came out with a book called XO Ox, which he illustrated. Illustrations are amazing. There's a lot of dialogue. Actually, it's a lot of letter writing going back and forth between an ox and a gazelle. And the expressions and the character designs are pretty incredible. Scott has a really unique style, and it's an awesome book. We're actually giving away a copy of this book. And to folks that are listening to this, to enter to win, all you got to do is head over to brandoncullum.com/21. This is episode 21, so Brandon Cullum, CULLUM.com/21. And you will see a place where you can click to enter to win a copy of this book. It's awesome. You should check it out. So before we get into the interview, again, this was Scott. This interview I liked a lot because his background is not just straight illustration. We actually dive into how he really got into stand-up comedy and how the whole idea of doing stand-up and especially improv, how he can kind of use that to help with the stories, almost working on a story with the same process that you could use with improv. So just kind of running with an idea and always saying yes and all the kind of the stand-up principles. So that one was really fun. And he's a blast to talk with, super nice guy. So before we get in though, if you guys love what we're doing here, if you can leave a rating and review over on iTunes, that is the number one way you can support what we're doing. Or if you're watching on YouTube, just hit the thumbs up and subscribe below and we'll have more coming your way. So let's dive into the interview with Scott. All right, well, welcome back to The Art of Show. We're excited to hang out with Scott today, calling in from New York. Scott has the best Skype name, I think, of anyone that I've had, Rolled Gold Chips. So let's start off with, where did that name come from?
That was a long time ago. I mean, that's coming up with, that's like, that moment we have to come up with a handle and you just have to think of something. I think I was eating some Rolled Gold Chips at that time. That's it.
That's it. That's perfect.
You're kind of stuck with it, dude. You're stuck with that forever. Actually, no, I guess I could change it, but that's like, what's his name? Dave Grohl said that about Foo Fighters. He's like, yeah, I'm not that excited about this name. He just kind of like did it, and I'm just have to stuck with it.
That's awesome.
Scott Lava, I guess, but
yeah, when I was adding that in, I was like, this is incredible. This is the best one I've ever had. So. Well, good stuff. Well, we'd love to kind of get into your art background. You've done a bunch of different things, but was art always something that was part of your story growing up? Was it something your parents did? Like, how'd you kind of get into it?
Well, I mean, I was always, it was very encouraged when I was young because to do it. I mean, my mom was very creative, and I was very into drawing and doing drawing contests with my brothers, and then drawing things like just adventure scenes and stuff. I mean, I was always into that sort of thing and telling stories like that. So. I think it was. I think she put me in art class when I was 6.
Oh wow!
Because I was really into it at that time. I won this. I entered this coloring contest, this Easter Bunny coloring contest at 6 years old, and got this little trophy for it. Maybe that was something that my mom was like, maybe he can color really good. It was. It was very good. I mean, it was like a 6-year-old would color something. It's nothing special. Basically, I've always been into it, and I was, I went to college to study. I studied. I went to do comics. Like I wanted to learn to do comic books, and then kind of got into wanting to do picture books as well. But that was but when I graduated, that was kind of, it was hard to find, figure out how to use that, I mean, I was kind of lost after college, so and I started working in video games after. So I did video games for 15 years before I got around to actually doing picture books and things like that. So.
Gotcha. What was it about comics that drew you to it initially?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I think like a lot of kids, I was really into comics. I just collected comics with my brother. I got obsessed with X-Men and all these things, and I was really into drawing like that. And I wanted to draw for X-Men. I wanted to. My 2 little dreams was I wanted to draw for X-Men. And I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. Those were the 2 things I wanted to do. And it was and those things shifted, as you grow and as you kind of get exposed to more things, And after college, I was exposed to other types of of art and other types of comics. Being exposed to 8 Ball and Yikes and all these other comics that really got me excited about the medium in different ways to tell a story. And so it kind of shifted. My whole concept of what to do shifted, and yeah. And my first job out of school was worked painting backgrounds for Star Wars games for children.
Okay, cool.
Which was just because I needed a job, and I never used Photoshop. They didn't teach me that in school. Like, I graduated in the mid-90s, so it was like there weren't even any like animation classes, and there weren't any comic classes. Like, they had to put it with sequential imaging, like, because storyboarding for movies was more of a viable kind of path besides comics. That wasn't considered good path. So anyways, it was just kind of like doing something like, and I didn't even like backgrounds either. So it taught me how to appreciate backgrounds and appreciate working with the team and how to edit my stuff. And so working in video games kind of did help me quite a bit when it comes to actually making books and doing projects and stuff, and really paying attention to like developing it and the pre-production of it. And that's the concept behind it is really the meat of it. That's really fun and exciting. So
was that Lucas Learning? Was that right?
Lucas Learning, yeah.
Okay. How long were you there with them?
I was there about 4 years, and that's where I met Tim Schafer, because he was working on Grim Fandango at the time at Lucas, and then when he left to start Double Fine is when he invited me to come on as art director, and then we started making. That's when our relationship began, and made Psychonauts and Brutal Legend and in those games. Yeah.
What's it like? Because we've had a couple guys in the game world, but I don't know if we've had an art director. What's it like to art direct for a game? Like, what's that? Man. Like, what's like your day-to-day like in that world?
Well, during Psychonauts is very stressful. Yeah, it was like working pretty much 7 days a week, all day, into the like 7 a.m. to like 10 at night. It was grueling time. It was like when because in the middle of the day you're kind of just looking at a lot of things. You're trying to trying to keep the style cohesive and trying to establish that style is very difficult. And I'm not very good at managing a bunch of people, so trying to do that on Psychonauts as well was just very troublesome. And we were learning how to be a company, and we were learning how to do all that stuff. So it's definitely a lot of work. So, and for me, like, my little way of dealing with it was I had my little spot of time, like 1 hour every morning before everyone came. That's when I get my work done. But 1 hour where I do a little comic, a little comic strip, and post it on our website as a way to get my mind off of it and off of this project. Because I'm in mind all the time. We're like walking around, doing things during the day. I'm like, oh my god, that would be cool in Psychonauts. Ooh, I should make a car that looks like that. Ooh, that tire looks weird. I definitely put that in Psychonauts. It's like constantly. And so it's really kind of stressful, but I mean, it was very satisfying. And but then on Brutal Legend, it kind of, we learned how to do it a little bit more, and my position was more like production designer, so I could kind of didn't have to manage the people and talk the tech talk, because I'm not very technical, so I couldn't really speak with the programmers and the graphics people. I didn't know what they're capable of doing. So then we got someone, Lee Petty, that was more amazing at that. So
that's cool.
It shifts and stuff. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So
but you're doing that, and you're also trying to do the concepts. You're trying to do concepts, storyboarding, whatever you can supply to get your point across, and try to find out what the look is, really. So
having that side project, that hour where you're doing comics, did you always have some type of something outside of your kind of day job that was going on?
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And looking back, I'm like, how the heck did I have so much time? It seemed, as a young person, you feel like you have a lot more energy. Like, I was in a band, and I was like, had another art collective that we would throw art shows, like not having to do with anything but like just fine art shows. And then I had my comic crew from Lucas that we would make our mini comics together and meet every Sunday and do jams and stuff. And then we'd go to convention. We'd go to Ape Expo in San Francisco to peddle our stuff, and so comics, art shows, music, these were all things I was doing congruently with the Double Fine, which I don't understand how I could have crazy to me how that worked out, especially when it seems like, I guess that math doesn't work out then if it was 7 days a week. So that must not be exactly right. I must be exaggerating, but it was I guess.
Have you ever felt like I've just got like too many interests, like I'm chasing too many things? Like how do you kind of focus on your projects?
It is kind of, I think that keeps me fresh and feeling like all those things together fueled each other, I guess.
Okay.
To take breaks from one thing. If you commit your life to one thing and not have any other outlets, then I think it's harder. I think you get stiffen up. But if you have these other things to kind of loosen up, they all fuel each other. At least it did for me. And as I'm older now, like it's a little bit harder to do that, but I still do have my hands in a lot of
Mm.
things, and I still have a lot more things that I want to do. I think I don't know. I feel like that once you get stagnant, you got to keep growing as an artist, and you got to push yourself to grow. But there are plenty of people that are fine with getting their thing, and oh, I found it. I'm just going to do this forever, and I don't need to do anything else. That's fine too. It's just I just get really antsy. I want to do a bunch of things,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
So,
and I guess I'm always optimistic that I'll get to them all eventually.
right, right.
So.
So you're working on games. How did the book conversation, how did that kind of enter your world? Was that a side project that it started with, or how'd you get into, or just books in general? So even whether it's the books of your artwork, just kind of how did that come about?
Well, I guess the first book that I put out, aside from like comics and things, was my collection of my art, my paintings that I had done for shows and things. So
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of gallery shows. I started getting to showing at Gallery Nucleus in
Yeah, yeah.
LA, 1988, and then that kind of, as more of those types of galleries popped up, like kind of more lowbrow pop
Mm.
culture galleries, like then I started showing a lot more. So I had a lot of work accumulated, and from that, I had the art book. Um, that I just kind of shopped around. And this is before Kickstarter, so it
Okay.
was like uh, I just kind of shopped it around and found a publisher just to put it out. But you didn't get a heck of a lot of money for it. You just kind of want it to get it out there
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm a little bit too lazy to do it myself, um, to distribute it and all
Mm.
that stuff. And then like Great Showdowns, that series came from a show at Gallery 1988 that I cited, the little moments of film, like where they're against each other. It's just
Yeah.
really simple little bite-sized things. I started doing a Tumblr of that so I
Mm.
can generate them on a regular basis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then from those, I started publishing those as books as well. But the picture books was something that I've always wanted to do, but it took me like 15 years to get around to finally
Mm.
doing it. And and that came from doing all the comics and being in various anthologies and meeting
Mm.
people at shows. And there was one called Flight Anthology,
Yeah, yeah.
with that I did a story called Eaglehead and Treehead,
Okay.
that Kazu invited me to be in it because of this little mini called Pyramid Car
Okay.
that I did. This is what he invited me to be in it. And from there, that was like a lot more visibility, and editors started coming to see what I could do, and I got an agent that Kazu introduced me to help me with that because that was a very stressful time to
Yeah.
organize myself,
That's cool.
and that's kind of how I got into it and she started shopping my stuff around, and from I probably wouldn't have been able to do it myself without an agent. I mean, I very much recommend getting agents to people because especially if you're, I mean, usually if you're an artist, there's a certain amount of like laziness,
That's good.
a certain amount of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you want to put your energy to creating and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I had Jake Parker on a few weeks ago. I think he was in one of the Flight anthologies. That's some of his work, which is cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned SNL, and I don't think anyone's ever said that was one of their dreams. Is that like comedy and stand up? Like, how's that part of your story?
Well, I mean, I've always been into comedy. I mean, I used to be very into Saturday Night Live and record all of them and know all the jokes and just like, I mean, I don't know. I was always into comedy like since I was young, and I think that plays a big factor in my art too. I mean, I think that's when I started realizing like what I wanted to do with my art
Yeah.
I didn't want to just create these epic scenes or like really well drawn people or whatever. Like I started realizing at these art shows, these gallery shows that I wanted to create things that made people laugh and they could enjoy it and they could point and they could exchange ideas with their friends, and that was my turning point with as a creator, because I saw an art therapist about it too, because I lost my wonderment of creating and why I wouldn't want to do it, and that was what I discovered I really loved about it. And since then too, it's like I also love performing. I love the
Okay.
idea of being in front of people, and I love creating sketches, and and it goes hand in hand with like cartoons and comics and the dialogue. Like the dialogue in my comics, I think about it as if they're talking to each other. I like to kind of think of these characters together. So I think that's an important thing for me with the dialogue. So wanting to be on Saturday Night Live, yeah, I mean, I wanted to perform and be a funny guy on there. but I mean, obviously that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But like, but I think that I have done improv though,
Okay.
and which is something that was another turning point for me as far as creating, like coming up with ideas that really helped me kind of loosen up.
Gotcha.
Is improv as a concept. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know about what that is, but the whole point of getting a concept from the audience, like a
Mm.
word or something to start from, and you just instantly start making a scene, creating characters and relationships,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that kind of helps you loosen up, and you're not thinking about it. You're not in your
Mm.
head. You're not think you're, and it's a good way to kind of loosen up and generate ideas. And I use that also when I'm trying to create ideas for anything,
That's cool.
writing comics or anything. Um, so yeah. And I've done a little bit of stand up, but not a lot. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I
really
don't know.
cool.
I just like the idea of performing a lot.
Okay, so before we get into XOX, you mentioned an art therapist. I don't think I've ever, I've definitely heard of therapy, but so what is that experience like, or what was that like for you? And you mentioned that kind of helped you refine your identity and what you wanted to create.
Well, I mean, it wasn't specific like an art therapist. It's just
Okay.
like I saw a therapist, and that was one of my major problems I wanted to talk about was
Yeah.
the loss of. I genuinely felt like I don't see why I need to create something. Like,
Mm,
what's the point of creating something?
mm.
Like, what do I want approval? Do I want someone to say, "Oh, well done"? Do I want someone to say, "Oh, that's well drawn"? Or like, what is it? Because a lot of my friends had that feeling of like, "Oh man, I really need to create, or else I would go crazy, or
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know what I'd do." It's like I have to always do it. And for me, I was like at that point, I was like, I don't even know if I like drawing or doing these things. It's like not a fun process for
Mm,
me. Like, well, I had to figure out what was a fun part of that process. So, and in talking to that my therapist, I started realizing that like I really liked observing children drawing and hearing their stream of consciousness, because that was a stream of consciousness. That was when I truly felt happy. And I'm
huh.
sure all of us are striving to maintain that with and also grow and not be just a naive person. Um, but like I would work a lot with children, like homeless children. We had this group that would go around and paint with them, and we'd supply them with paints, and then we'd watch them paint and help them paint, obviously. And I would like to ask questions and have them explain their painting to me, and that was an exciting time for me to figure out that like it's just an adventure. It's like a fun adventure. When you're done, sometimes it looks awesome,
Mm.
sometimes it doesn't, but it's an adventure that you lose yourself in,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like that's the kind of excitement that I want. So I
That's
mean,
cool. So
that's what I got out of it.
so for you, it isn't as much hey, that looks great. You did an amazing job. It's the journey of creation. Is that kind of
Yeah, I
what
guess
that draws you back to it?
yeah, I guess it's a journey of creation, but also yeah, I guess it's a little bit of that. And then it's also like the end product being just like a fun place to hang out, like
Oh,
a
okay,
place
cool.
to enjoy the adventure, and you lay enough pieces in whatever it is that people can make their own stories and they can discover things and they can feel empowered and kids can feel empowered. Um, so yeah, there's that because the journey isn't always awesome. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like every single painting I do, there's a point where it shifts from coming with ideas, always stressful, but then exciting when you find it, and then you start painting, and there's always that point where I'm like, oh, I've got to salvage this. It's
Yeah.
going down the tubes, and then I salvage it. Every painting seems like it gets to the point where and now I'm just salvaging, and then I come to a point I'm like, I'm calling it done. I think I like it now.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
so
cool.
it's not like a wonderful journey all the time.
Right. Right. That's
I hope
neat.
that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Okay, so getting into kids' books.
Yeah.
So XO Ox, for folks that may not know anything about the story, can you give kind of just like a quick overview of the
Well,
book?
okay, yeah. Well, it's a story that Adam Rex wrote about a gazelle and an ox that write letters to each other. Well, it starts with the ox kind of writing love letters to this gazelle, who's a very very popular, famous, like successful celebrity gazelle, and and he's just kind of like expressing how much he likes her, and she's really not into it, and she's like writing back like letters. It's just like it's unrequited love, I suppose. And
Yeah,
then eventually she realizes, this actually is kind of enjoyable.
yeah, yeah,
Spoilers.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just love letters, or it's just letters back and forth, slightly one-sided. But
So I was reading it a little bit earlier this week, and definitely a few times I was just laughing in my office, especially the reactions that you would draw. Like the one point where she gets the letter back, where she's like, she has a fault, like if she accepts this, and she like rips up the paper and all. It's like the super expressive. What's it like interpreting like a story with that. And I guess really the question, because Adam Rex, I mean, is an illustrator in his own right. So what's it like
Right.
illustrating someone else's story that they could illustrate as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, and that actually made me quite nervous because I know how good he is,
Yeah.
and like we know each other. I like him quite a bit, but so I wasn't as nervous because I know he's a good guy and everything. But yeah, I was kind of nervous that he is so good at drawing and he could easily do this himself. But I think that's kind of what makes it exciting as an artist and stuff. And you write something and it's fun to see how someone interprets it and everything. So. And it was fun for me to try to interpret because it was super funny. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
really well written, and it's fun to try to establish like how to make these characters, I don't know, lovable and not like making her seem, I don't know. It's I don't know if I can't describe it incredibly well, but uh trying to make it make sense that like he'd be writing to her and being into the what she's done, and also like that she would see how wonderful it could be to be into these other things, or because
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
very self-centered in my drawings. I mean, she seemed self-centered in the way that she reacted to things,
Yeah.
um because she had form letters and stuff like that, but then I was like, how much do I say that in the
Yeah.
illustrations?
It's
uh,
I love it. It's great. So what's your kind of process like? So you get, I guess, the manuscript, or you get the story from your agent. I'm guessing, is that kind of how that relationship started?
Yeah, usually my agent sends me manuscripts and I'll read them and say, yeah, yeah, this is a good one, or I'm not interested in this one.
S-
So that's what I got. I got it as a finished manuscript.
Okay.
So they had already finished it with Adam and asked me to do it. And then so I worked directly with the editor and art director, Neil Porter, um, and Jennifer Brown
So were
at
you
well,
at where? Sorry.
Macmillan.
Okay. Cool.
That's where that-
So are you, when you first get something like that, are you thinking through characters? Are you thinking like, are scenes popping out to you? Or is it that kind of improv piece where you're just throwing ideas out there and it's kind of rolling and see where it goes?
Well, I think I approach it like I approach games and other projects like that. Like I'll just start out with the character designs and kind of like little moments of kind of like them writing letters or what they might look like and feel like. But definitely start with like lots of designs of the characters, and then I start putting them in scenes and seeing how they work, and then start working on a loose dummy book. So I see all the pages laid out, and so you can see the flow of everything. Um, but yeah, so I start. That's usually where I start.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you working traditional or digital, or a little bit of both?
Um, I usually mostly traditional. I mean, doing sketches on paper and everything, but scanning them in and arranging them in a
Mm.
presentable way to send them, and also kind of doing a lot of rough stuff for the pages in Photoshop and scanning things in and doing a lot of the composing and compositing of things. And then the actual painting side of it, uh, I will print them all out and do them in watercolor.
Okay.
So
Cool. That's real
and
cool.
pencil. This one, I
Gotcha.
did some colored pencil this time.
That's awesome. That's real
And
cool.
it's yeah.
So you've got several books out. You've got a book with Bob Dylan. When I
Mm.
saw that, how did that come about?
Well, to be honest, it was something that like I mean Simon Schuster. That was a Simon Schuster, and they have license to do any of
Okay.
his songs into books if they wanted to.
Oh, really?
So
Okay, gotcha.
it wasn't. Yeah, so they asked me like they wanted to match me up with one of his songs and stuff. So we went through the songs and they chose that one because it would be a fun time for kids. Dogs it's called it Dogs Run Free, and it's one of his lesser known songs, but um, it's like yeah, it's fun because there's dogs running around having a good time. Just being it's about being yourself. Um, but it was working a lot with the Bob Dylan camp,
Yeah,
and not necessarily Bob Dylan himself. Like I don't know if he
gotcha.
even knows about that book existing,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be honest with you. So it's I mean it was yeah, it was fun though. They're very nice and they're very much like yeah, go for it, yay.
What was it like approaching a story, since you've got a music background, like doing a book based on a song and not just based on a written story?
Hmm. Um, well, it's interesting because it depends. I mean, it all depends on the song. I mean, it's like interpreting like poetry or
Mm.
something like that. It's like it's sometimes it's like an obvious story, and sometimes it's just hints of something that you need to kind of come up with some sort of visual. For this one, it seemed like we had to come up with some sort of visual story to go along with the words because there wasn't really a story in the words necessarily. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, but But yeah, yeah.
That's cool. And then I also saw that you had Neil Patrick Harris and Paul Shire on Fords for some of your other books. So
Yeah.
how did those relationships come about?
Well, a lot of them came from a lot of them have collected my art through like 1988, Gallery
Okay,
1988,
cool.
because there are a lot of people that go there and collect art like based on all kinds of things. And yeah, we started like Neil Patrick Harris and I start like kind of I asked him because I had done paintings for him before, and we kind of started a relationship like that. Um, and then same with Paul Scheer and Edgar Wright, and but Jack Black was probably the first one that I got, and he wrote the forward to my art book, and that was because we worked together on Brutal Legend. He
Oh, okay, cool.
was on, I mean, not together all the
Right,
time
right.
or anything. I just met him like once,
Yeah, yeah.
but he wrote a very short forward for that one. So
That's very cool. I guess all this is kind of leading to lots of folks collaborate. I mean, you're collaborating on books. Do you have like a dream person or like a dream project you'd want to collaborate with somebody with on?
oh wow. You mean working with someone in particular?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dang. Um, Gosh, that's a tough question. I know that like I've talked to like Philip Lord and Chris Knight, those guys that made like 21 Jump Street and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lego Movie and all that stuff like that. I've met them, and we said that we like each other's work, and I would love to work with them on something. I think they're working on Han Solo right now. I'd be like,
Are they really?
I
I
just
didn't know that.
they're doing the Han Solo movie,
That's
and I
cool.
think like it'd be so fun to just work with them on something. It just seems like they're funny guys, and like they really create funny, wonderful things. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that's. I mean, who knows? That's kind of doable, I guess.
that's awesome. So what projects are you working on right now?
Right now, I have some pitches that I'm getting together for my own books. And I'm also starting a book with I think I talked about it with Drew Daywalt, who
Okay.
did the Jet Crayons Quit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm working on a sequel to Psychonauts with Double Fine Productions,
Okay.
which is 10 years after the first one came out. So we're working on that, um, designing characters and so forth. That's about it, I think, for now.
That's cool. Do you have just side projects going on as well?
I
Just
can't
personal
say. Well, there is another book coming out of robots, but it's called Robots,
robots?
about robots
Yes,
bedtime.
that's
It's
awesome.
about these guys, these little robots, guys that are trying to go to bed. That's a book that I illustrated that's coming out soon, and I have another art book that I'm currently trying to assemble, and some activity books and things like that. So
Yeah, that's cool.
that won't come out. Those won't be out till the fall. So
That's very cool. Well, a couple other questions as we're kind of wrapping up. One, you mentioned gallery work a good bit, and I know some folks either are super into that world and some folks aren't. And it seems like you're kind of you mentioned with what was Gallery Nucleus, is that right? And so,
Gary Nicholson,
what's it
1988.
what's it like producing work? Like when you create paintings, are you thinking through how am I going to show this in a gallery? Like, because I guess it's got like a different feel and a different audience, or even a different way it's going to be like shown. Like,
Hmm.
do you approach work different, knowing kind of what the end medium is?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think I used to take more risks when I was younger on shows. Like I did a lot more solo exhibitions
Mm,
with Nucleus in 1988 and other places. Um, and I would come up with like a theme, like a concept, and then try to kind of explore that fully and think about how people can experience that in a
mm,
gallery setting. Like, for example, in like Gallery Nucleus, I did something called Home Slice, which was all about cross sections of
mm,
like homes, like pyramids and like ice houses and things like who might live in these places. So it's like all the different floors and stuff because I used to love doing that as a kid.
yeah, yeah,
That was when I was exploring the things that were fun as a kid.
yeah.
Um, and so that was something like I want people to go there and experience. And they were really big. I want them to experience that, um, and kind of have things to experience in the gallery along with that. So we had like puppets made that you can kind of hang out with,
Mm,
like Gallery Nucleus actually is one of the best places for the gallery experience because they've done stuff for all of my art book, all of my picture books too, and they would do things like for Dogs Run Free, they created this thing in the middle of the gallery, like an obstacle course for dogs, so they can kind of hang out in their own zone when you bring the dogs to the gallery, and there's like a little bar next to the normal bar for like dogs to get their treats and their drinks.
That's
and stuff
cool.
like that. So you can, and there was a hugging obstacle course for Hug Machine where you can go around and hug different things in under a certain amount of time. So like it was always fun to kind of try to come up with like what makes it special to be in a gallery experiencing these things.
Yeah, that's cool.
Not in a distracting way, but
Right.
I always kind of try to make it. I always want that to be the case, and I'm not always incredibly successful at it or have like the energy to do it as much. And so, but I do like the idea of just making something, having it on the wall, and having people walk through and poke each other and point things.
That's cool. Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned that like you like being able to create the stories, but then like inviting people into those stories to experience it, and that just feels like that's like the real life version of like your kids' books. Like that's cool.
Yeah. Exactly, and you kind of like you could be surrounded by it. Like that was another thing too. Is like we would have for every Great Showdowns book, we had I've had like 3 or 4 exhibitions with 1988, and we filled the gallery with like 200, 300, maybe more of those those little showdowns. So you're surrounded by them. So it's like, and when do you get to be in a big room that you're surrounded by these things, and you feel like you could just look around? And I mean, it's different than looking at things in a book or on a computer screen or even a film screen. It's like it's a cool way of looking at art for sure.
That's cool.
So
that's real cool. Well, I don't want to take up a ton of your time because I know you got lots of things going on. But for folks that want to get more information about you and what you got going on, any good places to find you?
Yeah, I mean, my main website, still for the moment, is pyramidcar.com. That might change soon. Who knows? But yeah, pyramidcar.com.
Okay.
It's like for all of my art and gallery stuff. And then greatshowdowns.com has the Great Showdowns. And Double Fine Action Comics is something I don't really update much anymore. But that's on the Double Fine site. So.
Okay. Good stuff. What about social media? Any good places if folks want to connect?
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, and I'm Scott Lava is my clever Twitter name and Instagram name, and also on Facebook. So you can find me on those places as well.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate your time. It was a blast chatting.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was great chatting with you.